Good evening, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Okay, so welcome to the MLOps workshop. Thank you all for joining me today. First of all, I would like to apologize for what happened yesterday, the technical issues that we were facing. Hopefully today we won't be facing such challenges again. Again, this workshop is also going to be recorded as well. So before we start, let me first introduce myself again. So my name is Osubright Deborah. I started my career as a cloud engineer with roles as an architect and DevOps engineer. I later moved into cloud security, cloud networking, and MLOps because it became an essential skill in my career. For about 4+ years now of professional experience building highly scalable, disaster recovery, lower latency, and secure systems on Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, and AWS, where I mostly spend 70% of my time on Azure and Azure DevOps services, then the remaining 30% on Google Cloud and AWS. Aside that, I'm also part of Andela and Turing community as well. So that's a little bit information about me. So let me quickly share my screen. Okay. So let us take a look at our agenda today. Okay, sure. So today we are going to look at MLOps. We are going to set up our environment. So this is actually what we did yesterday, but because of the technical challenges that we had, we are starting all over again in order for me to also record this workshop too as well. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to talk about what MLOps is. From there, we will move on to our environment setup. Then we will do 1 or 2 demo. Then we will end today's workshop with some questions and answers. So, introduction to MLOps. So what is MLOps, if someone may ask, right? So MLOps is the use of DevOps practices, okay, into machine learning applications in order to deploy models into different environments quickly to facilitate rapid deployment to enable continuous feedback loops. So what are some of the DevOps practices that we already know? Some include what? Infrastructure as code, whereby if we want to deploy resources on the cloud platform, instead of us going to the console to deploy the resources manually, we are going to use an infrastructure as code tool such as Terraform or Pulumi, or you can also use a bash script to deploy all your infrastructure. We also have version control. So version control, which helps 2 or more developers to collaborate on one particular project. So GitHub, Bitbucket, Azure repo are all examples of what version control. They also have what CI/CD pipelines. So with these CI/CD pipelines in DevOps, as a DevOps practice, we can also incorporate this into what a machine learning application lifecycle. Then we also have what testing, which is one of the most crucial thing in software development. Then we have what collaboration. Then we have what monitoring and logging. But the question right now is why MLOps, right? So why don't we just build our machine learning applications and deploy it into our production environment? Why exactly do we need MLOps, right? So let me give you an example. Assuming I'm a machine learning engineer or a data scientist, and I'm supposed to build a full ML application and deploy into a production. So I will definitely need a server whereby I have my Jupyter Notebook installed with my other software that I will need to train my machine learning model on, right? But the problem is that most data scientists out there don't have any knowledge about infrastructure, because as a data scientist or machine learning engineer, my only goal is to build and train efficient ML models and deploy them into production. I don't have any knowledge in infrastructure setup where I have to go and deploy resources. That's one. The next thing is something known as data drift and model drift. So what data drift simply means is that a change in data over time. So let's assume today we have some set of data sets. We trained our machine learning models and built our machine learning application out of it. Tomorrow, there will be a different set of data sets, which means that what I have to redeploy my entire infrastructure manually again and rebuild my machine learning application again and deploy it into production environment again. So assuming the following day too, there's new data sets, meaning that there's going to be a continuous loop whereby I have to redeploy my entire infrastructure, retrain my machine learning models and deploy them into production, which is going to be manual activities, right? So unlike software application that when we developed, we can use these systems for, let's assume, for 5 to 6 years without not making any changes to it. Machine learning applications don't work that way. Machine learning applications are applications that has to be updated frequently because there's always data being generated for that particular application, and we have to retrain the model again in order for it to meet with the applications that we have been being developed, right? So going back to some of the practices, DevOps practices, with infrastructure as code, and with the example that I gave, we can set up an infrastructure using Terraform, right? So I can personally create a Terraform script as an MLOps engineer to deploy all this infrastructure so that anytime I have to retrain my model, the only thing I have to do is to redeploy my infrastructure using this Terraform scripts without not manually deploying these things these resources altogether. Secondly, version control. If let's assume 2 or more data scientists or machine learning engineers are actually working on one particular machine learning project, right? We have to collaborate on that particular project. So if there's no version control, how are we going to contribute on this entire project? Then the second thing to here is CI/CD pipelines. So as I was saying, machine learning applications changes frequently, right? So in order for us to build the machine learning models manually, deploy it into production, and go through a repeated process, we can just configure a CI/CD pipeline which validate our data sets, pre-process our data sets, build our models out of it, evaluate it and deploy it into a production automatically without not any manual activities in it. Then we also have testing. So right after the machine learning model get built, we can implement testing such as unit testing or integration testing in our pipeline to make sure that we are shaping the right model into production. Then the next thing is collaboration. So as I was saying, with version control, we can 2 or more data scientists or machine learning engineers can collaborate on one particular project at a time. Then monitoring and logging. So with monitoring and logging, this helps us to monitor our machine learning models applications into production in order for us to know whether there's a drift in the model that we've deployed, in order for us to trigger an alert to redeploy the entire pipeline to train and deploy the machine learning models into different environments as well. So let's take a look at MLOps lifecycle. Okay, so we have something called problem definition. So problem definition, what it simply means that what are we trying to solve? Okay, so in our scenario today, we are going to talk about something called, we are going to work on a particular data set called loan prediction. So the model that we'll build will help us to determine whether we should grant a loan to an individual or not based on his input, right? So that's the problem that we are going to solve, right? So we have to define the problem, which is the problem definition. We also have exploratory data analytics. So let's assume the data set that we've gotten, I have no idea of what the data sets entails, right? So maybe whether it contains null values, it contains numeric values, it contains categorical values. I have to explore these data sets in order for me to get more insight from these data sets. So that's exploratory data analytics. Then we have something called data processing and feature engineering. So what data processing and feature engineering simply means is that machine learning algorithms that we are going to use to train our models do not work with categorical features. So when I talk of categorical features, I mean any alphabet. So let's say we have Kofi, or we have Clark, or we have Classroom. We have to convert those values into numerics, which are what numbers, in order for the machine learning models to understand and what build the models out of it for us. Okay. Then the next step, which is what model training, is where we will try to perform experiments on what different machine learning algorithms, and also try to what optimize the models that we are trying to build. So the training is this place is where the training starts for us to what build our machine learning model. Then we have what model evaluation. So let's assume after the model has been built, how are we going to determine whether this model is ready to be shipped into production, right? So we have some metrics that we use to what evaluate our models. Okay, so we have some in classifications. We have something called accuracy score, F1 score. We have confusion metric. We are going to have a look at all these metrics, some of these metrics out there. Then we have what optimizing the model. So after we evaluate the model, we realize that, oh, okay, this model is not performing well. We have to what optimize it by what changing something called hyperparameters. Okay, so we tune the hyperparameters of that particular model and try to what rebuild it again to make sure that what we've gotten what we need. Then the next thing that we have is what model deployment, where we deploy this model what into production, right? So this model will be in, let's assume, different environments. We can have development environment, staging, and what also production environment. Then the next step is what maintenance and what monitoring. So with this maintenance and monitoring, we are going to monitor the models to make sure that what there's no model drifts, right? So there's no change in model over time. So if that happens, we have to what get notify and how should I put it? Trigger a pipeline to what retrain the models again and what deploy the models. Then the last thing is what iteration. Iteration simply means is that we are going to what repeat the entire process again in case of what there's new data set, or there's what model drifts which has occurred in our what application. Okay, so let's move on to the next step, which is what our environment setup. So I've personally come up with a template that we are going to use to set up our entire infrastructure. So the resources that we need, we are going to set them all up on AWS using a script that I've already provisioned. So we are going to look at what MLOps. So meaning that from day one, we have to start what implementing what DevOps practices. As we already discussed here, is that MLOps is the use of what DevOps practices into machine learning applications, right? So we are going to what implement some best practices of DevOps into what machine learning applications, and that's what an MLOps engineer what does. So let me quickly go to my GitHub account and share the link with anyone who wants to follow along. So I've placed it in the chat. You can just pick it up and follow along if you want to. But I doubt that will be possible. So I'm just going to download this template. Let me quickly move there. Okay, great. So for us to follow DevOps practices in machine learning applications, I've already come up with a use case. So normally, whenever you join an organization, there will be a ticket which will be assigned to you either through Jira or if you're using Agile DevOps, they will be using something like Agile Work Items to assign tasks for you. So let's assume right now a ticket. I'm an MLOps engineer. I joined an organization called QuickBank, and this ticket has been assigned to me as an MLOps engineer. Okay. So looking at the task which has been assigned to me, it says, "Hi, Bright. Welcome to QuickBank. My name is Ben, your supervisor. Remember, we had a quick discussion earlier on. Anyway, this is a new ticket for you, right? So this is what we are going to do. This ticket has been assigned to me. This is the use case that we are going to use. It has been assigned to me to set up an infrastructure for data science engineers. So I'm an MLOps engineer now, and I've been given this ticket to set up an infrastructure for data science team to come and collaborate on, and also for me to set up pipelines to automate the entire process that they will be doing. So my first task is to create a new repository for the data for our data science team for a new project. So the repo name should be Loan App. I'm just going to quickly copy the name, then try to create the new repository as Loan App. So I'm going to leave it as public. Great. So the repository has been created now. So the next thing that I'm supposed to do is add the following data scientists to the repository that I created. So the first guy is Marv Rob. Let me go to settings. So in order for you to add a participant to a particular project that you are working on, you just have to come to settings and go to collaborators, then click on add people. Then I'll just search for the person's name over here. It will pop up. I'll select it and add the particular user. So I'm supposed to add 3 of them. Let me add the next one. Great. So we are done with the second task now. So the third task that I've been assigned to do is to set up a GitHub project and add the following work items to it. So let me quickly navigate to my repository and go to project. So in here, I'm going to create a new project. So I'm going to name it Loan App version 1. Then I'm going to change the view from here to board. Then I'm going to create another view over here. I'm going to name here table. I'm going to add something called roadmap over here. The next thing that I'm supposed to do is to add 4 work items, which is set up our infrastructure and I should assign it to myself. Then I should build a model and deploy manually, assign to Wonder, then assign automate model building and deployment to myself, then document the entire solution to myself. So actually this was also supposed to be something that I should assign to myself, since I'm the one going to do everything in this project. So let me start with this first work item. So I'll go into it and assign it to myself. Let me quickly add the remaining ones. So one thing you should know that as a DevOps or MLOps engineer, these are some of the tasks that you'll be doing when you join an organization. There will be a ticket which will be assigned to you, and you have to perform these tasks on your own. So right now I'm acting in this workshop. I'm dividing myself as a cloud engineer, MLOps engineer, and also a machine learning engineer. So the last work item that I have to add is for document the entire solution. So with the documentation, I'm going to take my time to show some of the best practices that I've been using. Normally, most documentations are very good when you involve detailed architecture diagrams as well. So with architecture designing tool, we'll do everything from scratch our own through this workshop. Okay, now we are done. The next task for us to do is to create 4 new branches with the following names from main. So before we do that, let's quickly add this to the repository that we just created. So let me open my terminal. So this is not a Git repository yet, so I just have to initialize it with as a Git repository. Then there's no, as you can see, just a minute. So Git remote, like Vim, what it does that it will show you the if there's any repository attached to this project, it will show you. But since there's no repository, let's navigate to our project. And let me copy this. Remember, I'm using SSH. I'm not using HTTPS. So let me quickly add it. So now if I type git remote, you can see that there's the project has been initialized with a remote repository. So now we just have to add them quickly. So this is just an initial commit that we are doing. Then we are pushing it to as well. So it's asking for my username, which means I didn't pick I picked the HTTPS. I'm supposed to pick the SSH. So let me recopy it and delete what I already have and add it again. So in order for me to delete it, I just have to type git remote remove origin. Now if I type git remote, see it's no more here. So I just have to add it again. So now git remote to confirm that it exists. Now you can see that it exists. Now if I type git push, it's not going to ask for any password again. To push directly over here for me. Now let me quickly refresh the page. Now everything is here now. So let's move on to the next task that we are supposed to do. We are supposed to set up 4 new branches. So we have the branches name should be setup, development, staging, and production. So let me quickly navigate to my page again. I'm going to settings. No, sorry, let me go back to my code. Then I'll click on branches, branch. Now I've been navigated toward the branch page. All I have to do is to click on new branch, and I'm supposed to create it from the main branch. So I'll start with setup branch. Then I'll add the next branch. Remember, all should be main. If I click, I will see setup and main. The instruction says that create 4 new branches with the following names from main. So meaning that I'm not supposed to select setup. I have to select main. Then the next one is stage. Then the last one is prod. Now we are done with the next task. Let's move on. We are supposed to create 4 new environments with the following names: setup, dev, stage, and prod. So what we normally do is that anytime we are shipping applications, so let's forget about MLOps now. Let's go back to normal software development. we normally have a branching strategy. Okay, so this is a branching strategy that I have come up with for the data science teams to collaborate on that particular project. Okay, because most of the time we have development environment, staging, and what production environment, right? So we anytime there's a new change, it comes to the development side, we test to make sure that what everything is working perfectly. Then we bring it to staging. So some don't use stage, some use user acceptance for test. Okay, so some organization will use user acceptance test. We are using host stage, whereby the end client will get access to the application in this staging environment to test to make sure that it suits the requirement that he or she needs. Then if it gets accepted, then we push it to production for it to be used. So this environment, what is going to help us achieve is that it's just going to help us to implement rules. Because if you come down here, there's an instruction to set up a CI to validate all pull requests before request can be approved. If validation fails, merge request should not be approved. So let's quickly navigate to our console. Let's move to settings, then come down to environment. So I think that there's already one environment set up for me called setup. So with setup, we will need I'll have to review the code before it can be moved. So I'm going to assign it to myself since I'm the only one. Now, the next thing I'm supposed to do is allow administrators to bypass configurations rule. No, we don't want any administrator to bypass this rule, whereby a code won't be reviewed before it will be shipped into a particular environment. We want every code that anyone pushes, the code should be reviewed first. Let me quickly save it. And let me come down here and select the branch that I want to apply this environment to. So this rule that I've set up is going to be applied to a specific branch, which is set up. So let me quickly go back now and create the next branch environment. So from the instruction, you are supposed to create setup, dev, stage, and prod. So we are done with setup. The next one is dev. Development, yes, we also need review before. We don't want administrators to bypass. Now let me select the branch. So it's dev branch that we want dev branch to deploy to this environment. So the next thing for us to do is stage. Want to review to as well. Selecting the branch. So this stage now. One more left, which is production. This one, we also want to review as well. Don't want administrators to bypass. I'm selecting the branch, which is production branch. Now, our environment has been set up now, which has 2 rules embedded in each of them. Now, the next step for us to do is to map each branch name with each environment. So, example, branch name dev maps to environment dev. That's what we've already done after we created an environment. If you move to prod, you can see that we've mapped it with the production branch. Now, the next thing for us to do is set up a CI to validate pull requests before merge requests can be approved. If validation fails, merge request should not be approved. Good. So now, let me try to explain something over here. Let's move to branches. As we can see, we have 5 branches over here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So any development activities from the data science team will pass here first, then it will come to the main branch before stage, then prod. If there's a new setup that we have to set up, the entire infrastructure, it will come here. When it passes and get deployed, we merge it back to the main again. So what we are going to do is that we have something called actions. Let me open it in a new tab. Actually, I think I should have done something before even coming here. Let me go to the project and try to. So this is what we are actually working on. So I have to move it to what in progress for my supervisor to know that what I'm actually setting up my infrastructure. That's the first thing that I should have done. Let me quickly go back to the repository. So now we are setting up our infrastructure. So let's navigate to action. So you can see that what when we created the branches, a GitHub action got triggered. The reason why this got triggered because there's actually a workflow inside over here. Let me close this thing up. So what this workflow is doing is that it's just a Terraform, it's trying to run a Terraform script to deploy our infrastructure. So from our presentation, we were like, what? We can use infrastructure as code to set up an infrastructure for data science teams to collaborate on a particular project, right? And that's what we are doing over here. We are using a script, which is what we are using Terraform script, which is an infrastructure as code, which can be found over here. So we have something called models in Terraform. So we are trying to create something called a SageMaker IAM rule. So this is a rule that we are trying to create. This is a policy, and we are trying to attach the policy and the rule together. We are trying to create a secret manager. We are trying to create code repository. We are trying to create a notebook. This notebook is what the data scientist team and the machine learning engineers will use to build and train the machine learning models. So in this workshop, I am personally going to take you guys through how this process is being done in order for anyone who doesn't have a background in machine learning or data science, especially if you're a DevOps engineer, so that it will help you understand how an MLOps workflow gets created. Then the next thing over here is the storage that we are trying to create as well. So let me quickly come here and let's have a look at something over here. So he's saying that he'll collaborate with the data science team to come up with a robust pipeline. Okay, we've not reached here yet. This will be after we are done with the development setup. It's asking us to set up monitoring tools, login for dev stage, and main. Okay, great. So let's do something over here. This has failed, meaning that our infrastructure has not yet been set up. So let me open my cloud AWS account. Let me open the services that we are going to use. So these are the 4 services that we are going to use in this workshop. We are going to create a new storage account. We are going to create a SageMaker. We are going to create a DynamoDB too as well. So before we can set up this infrastructure, this is a different service. This entire AWS is a different service on its own. And GitHub is also a different service on its own. Okay. So we have to create an authentication for GitHub to authenticate itself to AWS in order for it to deploy all the resources on AWS. Right now, GitHub doesn't have permission. So if we move into what happened, and if we drop down this one, if you read the errors over here, is an authentication error. So meaning that GitHub Action doesn't have access to AWS in order to deploy these resources. So we are going to use something known as OIDC, I have totally forgotten the full meaning. Let me see, OIDC. Open ID Connect, okay? So it's actually an OAuth2 framework, okay? An OAuth2 framework which helps us to authenticate external resources into a particular environment. So in our case, GitHub Action is an external thing, and we want to give access to GitHub Action towards AWS, okay? So just all you have to do is to follow my steps. So let's come back over here. there's actually a README file over here that we also have to follow first. So this template assume you already have an AWS account. Then it's telling us what set up authentication with GitHub Actions and AWS using what OIDC. So that's what we are actually going to do now. So first, let's type GitHub Actions with AWS OIDC. So I'll click on the first link, then go to AWS IAM role. Let me quickly go to identity provider. Okay, so I'm going to set up a new, let me delete this one. It has been deleted now. So I'm going to add a new identity provider. And the identity provider that we are actually using is called OpenID Connect. Okay, so let me come back here to the documentation. I'm actually using the documentation to set it up. When I down here, we are going to add an identity provider to AWS. So for the provided URL, we should use this URL. So this is what we are going to use. Let me go back to IAM and just paste everything over here. Then I'll click on hot, generate terms. So it has already generated it. Now the next thing for me to do is what? For the audience, I should use what? STS, Amazon AWS.com. So I'm going to copy this STS as well. Come on. And just paste it over here. Make sure there are no spaces. Now I just have to click on add provider. Now I've added the hot GitHub provider. Now I'll go to rows, create a new row. Then I'll select what web identity. Then down here I have to select the provider that's what I created. Then the audience that I added to as well. Then I'll move on to next. Don't select any policies yet. Click on next. Then copy everything that you can see over here. Copy it. Then click on edit. Then the next stage is to select what custom trust policy. Then I'll just have to replace everything, the things that I copied over here. So I'm just going to pick out this thing over here. Within the condition block, then I'll go back to the documentation and scroll down. So you can see there's a condition block over here too. I'm going to copy whatever I'm seeing over here. I've already gone through and read through the documentation. That's why I'm moving fast. You can also go through in your free time. It's very easy to follow along with it. And I'll just paste them in between the condition block. And the next thing we have to do is to change here. You see we have octo.org, which means the organization name, then octo repo, the repo name. So I'll go back to my GitHub account, and my organization name is Cloud with Deb, and the project and the repository name is Loan App. So let me quickly navigate over here and change everything quickly. And let me change the repo name to Loan App. Now, the next thing that I have to do is so let me explain something here before I move on. So what it means is that I'm giving access to my GitHub. I'm instructing this role that an identity will be coming, which has a name of what? Cloud with depth / what? Loan App. So meaning that even if I use this role in a different repository, it won't work because it has what? A loan app over here. So if I want to use this same role with any repository, the only thing I have to change is what? Remove everything and what? Replace it with star. But in our case, we are limiting access to it. We are using list privileges over here. So I'm just going to use loan app, which is the repository name. And this star means what? All branches, all branch. So if I only want this role to work with only main, I'll just put main. If I want dev, I'll just put dev. But in our case, we have different branches. So I'm just putting star there. So in GitHub organization, loan app repository, all branches, any branches in loan app repository should be able to use this role. Now the next thing I'll do is to click on next. Then I have to select the role. So I'm giving GitHub Action access to my AWS infrastructure. So what action do I want GitHub Action to do? I'm going to select, these are the roles that I currently need, but you should never use this in production. Administrator access means that this person has a very high hot permission. So if there's a breach, someone can do anything in your cloud infrastructure. So under normal circumstances, you should use something known as what least privileges, okay? But since it's a demo that I don't want to be having issues with permissions and authentication errors, that's why I'm giving it full access. So the first policy that I will give, permission that I'll give is what administrator access. Then I'll search for something called SageMaker. Well, this one, I'm going to give it what? SageMaker full access. Then the next thing for me to do is just click on next, then give it a name. So let me name it as Loan App GitHub Action hot. And let me just create it now. At first, we used to use something known as access key and secret key. Now it's not the recommended way. This is the recommended way from AWS. Now all the three cloud platforms support it: Google Cloud, AWS, and Microsoft Azure. They all support this open ID connect way of what authenticating GitHub Actions towards the cloud providers. So let me quickly open this. Then the next thing we are supposed to do is what? Copy and paste the created role name and replace it in GitHub/workflow/setup.yml line number 23, which looks like the following. So something like this. We are going to replace this thing with what the name of the role that I created over here, which is actually this one. So let me quickly copy it and come over here. Line number 23. So here it is. I just have to replace it with this. Save. And the next thing for me to do is to generate a new token in your GitHub account with repo, workflow, write package, delete package, and notification permissions was selected. Make sure to copy the generated token and save it somewhere else. So that's what I'm going to do now. After this, then I'm going to delete all these tokens. So it actually doesn't matter. This token shouldn't be exposed to anyone. So actually I clicked on what my profile, then I click on what settings. Then I just have to scroll down to developer settings. Then what I'll click on token classic. Then I'll click on, let me quickly delete this one. Good. Then I'll click on generate new token. I'm going to use this classic one. Then let me give it a name, loan app hot token. I'm going to give it permission, the repo permission, the workflow, write package, and hot notifications. This one. And I'm going to create. I'll just select it and copy it somewhere. So let me just leave it as how it is. After this workshop, I'll just delete everything. So now I have created it and copied it somewhere as it says over here. So now in your GitHub repository, settings, action, secret, and variables, action secret, create secret, the following variable name. So we have to create secrets in the repository that was we created for the MLOps project. So let me quickly copy this one first. And let me quickly navigate to settings, secret and variables. Now click on action. So now I'm supposed to add secret. Okay, let me navigate back. We have variables and what secret over here. The instructions are for me to create a secret. So I'm going to add a secret over here. So anytime you run the workflow, it's going to pick the values from here. And that's the password for this. Just have to put it here. Save it. Now the next one. So it's saying that we replace the value with the GitHub token created. That's what we've done. Now the next thing is to add a GitHub username. Username shouldn't have been a secret, but anyway. I'll just type cloud with dev add. And the next thing I'm supposed to do is to add my AWS account ID. Okay. I want to use a secret. Paste it here. Then let me navigate to my cloud infrastructure. Copy the account ID from here. Then also paste it over here. We are done. There's our secrets over here. So now the next thing for us to do is towards in this file, line number 15, we should change the value of region to region of our name. So provide region, or leave it as default. So in this workshop, I'll highly encourage all of you to use this particular region, because I remember after I finished generating this template, I tried to replicate the same infrastructure in a different region, and I was facing some issues creating their server buckets, giving me location constraints, and all those kind of errors as well. So I'll highly recommend you to use just this region for the entire section, okay? So if I go to the setup.yml file, line number 15, as the instruction suggested, there's already a region over here. So I'll just leave it as default. Then let's look at the next step. Line number 13 in the same setup.yml file, I should change the action of the value of action to apply, okay? So this is what this thing, this script does is that if you change the value of here to apply, it's going to set up all the infrastructure for you. So after we are done with our setup and we want to destroy everything, we just have to remove it and change it to what? Destroy and push it back again. It's going to what? Set up everything for us automatically. But there's one thing that we've not yet done yet. Let's go back to our GitHub Actions and go to branches, okay? We are going to add rules to our branches, okay? Because we don't want any of the teams, so either from the data science team or from the DevOps or MLOps team, to be merging code to the branches that we've created directly. So if we come back here, we don't want anyone to actually push code over here directly. It has to pass through a pull request for us to review to make sure that all the changes which have been made is what we need, okay? So we are going to apply rules to it, to the branches over here. So let's go to branches and click on add branch protection rule. So this one, I'm going to apply this rule to the development branch. So I'll just name it as dev. Naming consistent to is something that you should also get familiar yourself with. Then require pull request before merge. Exactly. We want to create a pull request before we merge to the development environment. In our case, no one is going to review from here. Then the next thing is to select require status check pass before merge. So if this pull request fail, meaning that we can't merge whatever changes that we've made to this particular development branch, so meaning that all pull requests has to pass before we can merge it. So if it fails, we can't merge it. That's what this is doing here, and it's using this you see this name over here, setup PL. If you come to our script, there's a setup PL. So this has to pass before we can move any source code over here, okay? Any changes. So let me see. Oh, okay, so there is dev environment. So here we don't have it yet because there's for setup. Okay, please keep in mind there's a setup, and the branch here too is for setup. So with development, we don't have to select this one for now. We will do that later. Then we don't want any administrators to bypass all the rules that we are setting. I'll create, and I'll also do the same thing for setup now. So now with the setup, I'm going to select this over here because it's setup PL. PL means pull request. Then I'm going to restrict administrators from bypassing these rules. So meaning even if the pull request fail, no administrator can approve of for it to be merged to the setup branch. Let me quickly do it for the remaining branches too as well. It's almost time. Network products. Great. So now we are done. So the next thing that we have to do is to push our source code. So now we are saying that we can't push directly to these branches. So let's confirm what we've just done. Let me open my terminal again. Let me quickly add what we have over here. It's push. Okay, great. So it went. The reason being so is because I forgot to apply a rule to the main branch. And if I type get branch, I'm on the main branch. But if I navigate over here and you see that there's no rule for main, I also have to add one for the main. It is a mistake that I just made, so it's okay. Great. So let me quickly make some changes over here. Let me just delete this comment. Let me see. Let me push again. It's actually going to fail. It won't work. You see, this is the error. Protected branch update field for refs heads main. Okay, changes must be made through a pull request, so we can't push directly to the branch. Okay, but if you remember one thing, I'm not the only one working on this project. Okay, let's take the concept that way. So how are we going to know that I'm the one who made a push to this particular who pushed these changes, right? So what I mean is that I have to create a new branch, right? Then I'll push this branch to the repository, then try to create a merge request and merge it to the environment that we want to run into. Okay, so each organization have their way, but from based on my experience and some organizations that affect it, most of them use this approach. So we have something called user. We are trying to check out a new branch using users at what I'm going to write my name. Then my task is to set up environment. Okay, so user is Bright. Sorry, it's Bright Deborah. And the task is set up environment. Now, and if I hit on get branch, this is the new branch. So anytime you want to see the changes, who worked on this branch, you will know that is Bright, and he worked on with particular task, setting up the environment. So this will become clear for anyone who is reviewing the codes, the source code in GitHub to understand what's going on. So let me quickly push this one. It's actually going to create a new branch. If we navigate to our console and go to our code, see that there's a new branch over here. Okay. So now then the next thing I have to do is to create a pull request. So I'll just come here, pull request, and I'll create on new pull request. Then I'm going to merge this one from here to setup, because we want to set up our environment. Then I'll click on create. So you have to name the pull request. So it's a pull request to merge these changes into setup branch. Okay. I mean, this name is very clear for anyone to know what's going on. These are the changes that we made. So let me just quickly create the pull request. Now see something. It's saying that setup PL is required, right? So now I can merge, but watch something over here. It means that there's a pull request which is running to make sure that our infrastructure is valid. So this has to pass. If this were to fail, we won't be able to approve it. So you see that it's waiting for it to finish. Okay, it's waiting for it. So let's wait a little while for the pipeline to finish running. It's validating the Terraform script that we've written. So see that it has passed. Now, if you come here, what now is now green. I can click on what merge pull request. So all I have to do is click on merge and what confirm. Then a new pipeline is going to trigger. Let me quickly come back here and see. Now I've gotten an email over here that there's a new changes that I have to review. If you remember correctly, when we did some configurations over here, I think going to environment setup, right? I added myself as what cloud dev what I should review before what it can be provisioned. That's why it's waiting for me to what review. So I'll just have to go there and what click on review deployment. Okay, everything is fine. I'll just put some comments. Everything is fine now. Then I'll click on what approve. Now let me open it. You see that what is going to what provision everything for us. So it's just getting started now. It's checking out from the repository. It's going to generate the Terraform provider. It's keeping okay. Okay, it's actually trying to destroy. Did I seems like okay, there's it. You see, I've made a mistake over here. I hope you can see what the mistake. If you read the readme file, it's like in setup.yml file, line number 13, make sure that the value of action is set to apply. Okay, but here I've made it at all destroy. So it's going to trigger this workflow to destroy a resource which doesn't even exist. So I'll just have to come back and change it from what destroy to apply. Now we have to follow the same process again. Just putting everything on my line. We don't have to create a pull request. Okay, we have to create a new one because it has already been merged. So we have to create a new one again. So I just have to come back again, create a new pull request. So I'm going to merge this to what? Setup now. So now, see, I'm changing this one to what? Apply. These are my changes. I'm subtracting destroy and I'm just applying what? Apply. Then I'll just click on what? Create. I will name my pull request. So PL to merge this into setup. Then I'll click on what? Create. So with this one, we have to wait for it to revalidate itself again. So let's come back over here, go up. Now it's trying to validate to make sure that our infrastructure is up to date. So we can't actually approve of it unless everything is every task force passes. So let's wait whilst it gets validated. So now it has passed. If I come here, see it's now green. Let me quickly merge it. And let me go and approve. So there is it. I just have to click on review. So deploy resources. It's almost time. So now everything is going to get provisioned. So let's wait whilst everything gets provisioned. But I think it's going to take a little time because of AWS SageMaker, because with that service, it takes a little bit of time. So as you can see, based on our discussion, we said that MLOps is the use of DevOps practices into machine learning applications. And whatever I've been doing so far is DevOps practices that I'm actually doing. And I mean I'm using this practice into machine learning application. So I'm trying to set up the infrastructure that we are going to use to train our machine learning models. So now it's getting provision. If I scroll down, it's going to deploy all the resources for us. So whilst waiting, and since it's time and it's question time, let me quickly answer some of the questions that you guys have while this infrastructure gets set up. So if anyone has a question, you can start asking, please. Okay, so someone is saying you'll be happy if the recording made available. Okay. Sure. So I'll actually upload this workshop onto my YouTube account, and I'll share the link in the group so anyone can have access to it as well. Then let me see. What of yesterday's recording, please? Good. So since yesterday I was having some technical challenges. So whatever I have just done is what we did yesterday. So I've just repeated what we're supposed to, what we did yesterday. So that's what I'm actually recording. Exactly. Someone said I think this recording is a better version of yesterday. Exactly, because I think yesterday I was having a little challenge. That was that. Thank you. So yes, Anthony, I can see you have a question for me.
Yes, good evening, everybody.
Good
So
evening.
to get straight into it, my question is, you said you were using SSH over HTTPS, and I wanted to know if there are any significant benefits that cause you to use SSH.
All right, good. In fact, that's a great question that Anthony, you've actually asked. So actually, we have two ways. It's either you use the GitHub token, which is this one. I'm still exposing them. I will just delete them after lab is done, so it doesn't matter. So it's either you use this one or you use. Let me quickly navigate to that section too as well, and I'll explain it very soon. Or use this what SSH cookies. So I've already created a public and private key, and the public key is over here. Okay. So with this personal access token, meaning that anytime I have to push a source code or pull or do anything from my local machine to GitHub, I'll have to provide these tokens all over again. And the moment these tokens get exposed, so let's assume the one I just created get exposed by someone else, the person can get access to based on the permissions given to it. So let me give you an example. See the permissions over here. You are giving it what admin organization when you are generating a token, and let's assume you are giving it what uh, delete packages what permission. Then you are giving it admin what public health key. So if this after you generate this token and it gets exposed by someone else, an attacker can what use it against you to have access to your infrastructure, your GitHub account, and do anything he or she wants. But the moment you use this SSH key, you are actually safe. Even though we know that with tech, nothing is safe. It's just a matter of time before someone get access to your system. But this one using SSH key is much more secure than using this what tokens. So that's it. Any other question for me, please?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My
Good
question,
evening.
my question is, what courses or topics can someone learn to become a better MLOps engineer?
Can you come again, please?
I said, what courses or maybe topics someone can learn to become a better MLOps engineer?
All right, good. So based on this workshop, I'm going to work as a data scientist or a machine learning engineer, and at the same time, a DevOps engineer, combining them as what an MLOps engineer, which means that for you to become an MLOps engineer, it's highly advisable for someone who is coming from a data science or machine learning background or a DevOps engineer background. The reason being so is because all the infrastructure that we are trying to set up, you see, it has passed. Everything that I'm doing here are all DevOps practices. And based on what I explained earlier on, that DevOps is the use of what, MLOps is the use of what DevOps practices into machine learning hot applications. And these are some of the DevOps practices that we are actually using. And I'm finding it very simple to do because I have very strong experience in DevOps, and at the same time, I have a very strong experience in building machine learning models, computer vision, and natural language processing applications too as well. So me coming from both sides, it gives me an advantage. Okay, but for someone who's from a data science background, can move to MLOps very easily by learning some of the DevOps practices. But for someone who is from a DevOps background to move into MLOps, the person also has to learn some of data science and machine learning practices. So something like the life cycles of what MLOps, how each stage get done. So in this workshop, I'm actually going to take you guys through everything over here, starting from problem definition, exploratory data analytics, all the way to what the iteration. Okay, so someone who's from a DevOps background can move to MLOps very easily. Someone who's also from a data science or a machine learning background can also move to MLOps very easily. But if you are not from both sides, you really have to get time to take one field first, either DevOps or data science or machine learning, to get familiar yourself with those areas before you move into MLOps. Please, is there any other question for me to address? Okay, so someone is saying that so
Yeah.
SSH
Yeah,
for security. You really
Can
have
I
to.
say something? Can I ask something like
Sure,
in
you
addition
can.
to? Yeah. So I want to know if you know all these, MLOps. Hey, sorry, DevOps and DevOps, and then some bit of data science and machine learning, some bit of. Is there anything else too that you need to like maybe learn to make you sharp? Like, because
All right.
I'm gathering that apart from this, you have some experience in other stuff as well, with the
Good.
little that I know.
Good. So actually what you are saying actually makes the thing right. I've been seeing this misconception that if you want to be let's say software engineer, you have to learn HTML, CSS, back end, then you are done. Then a little bit of cloud computing. But if I'm the one trying to be a software engineer, I'll go extra mile. All my friends who knows me know that I'm someone who try to go extra mile. So me, what I normally do in my day-to-day activity, in my working activity, is I do architecting. So if there's new application in that we have to build, I'm the one who's supposed to say that, let's say we have to use Google Cloud, AWS, or Microsoft Azure. After that, I'm the one going to what? Select the cloud resources. So if we are going for serverless, we are going for PaaS, or we are going for IaaS, right? I have to come up with different architecture, okay, to meet the business requirement based on the budget of the application, and using something called raw architect framework, which has been defined for us when we are trying to architect applications on the cloud. Also using something called 12-factor 12-factor app. So with the cloud architect framework, we have cost optimization, operation excellence, security, performance, and what? Reliability. Okay, so it gives me, how should I put it? Aside the architect tool, I also do networking and security on the cloud too as well. And no one asked me to do it. I'm just a cloud engineer. I just like to add value to myself, and I have to make sure that anything that I'm learning, I learned it very, very, very well, because there's a huge competition in the market. And if you are applying for a job, what makes the recruiter pick you over someone? If you are just an average person and someone comes with additional skill sets, they will pick the person and what, leave you. And what we are doing here, I am mostly strong in Azure, 70% than Google Cloud and AWS. But aside that, I work on all the tech platforms professionally. So the only thing you have to do is to be willing to learn and go extra mile. That's it. So if I'm you, as you are saying, any extra skills, I will personally advise you to learn cloud security, cloud networking too as well. Okay, so whilst we are designing our pipelines, we can also integrate something called Sonar Cube or Code Kill to find vulnerabilities in our hot source code and all that. So these are also hot security concepts, something called DevSecOps. All these things I learned it on my own because I'm someone who always like to explore. So it actually depends on the individual. Please, is there any other questions for me to address?
Sorry, I want to ask again. Like, if we finish this workshop and someone call himself an MLOps engineer, I am coming
Great.
from a DevOps background, so I'm yet to learn data science and all of that. So that's the question I want to ask.
Great. So from after this workshop, since you are very lucky because I'm going to build the machine learning models, everything with you guys, and I'll be explaining everything that I'm doing. The only thing you have to do is to pay good attention and ask the right questions for you to get things clear. Then the moment we are done with this workshop, you can be an MLOps engineer on AWS, and you can still do a transfer of knowledge from AWS to Google Cloud and AWS. Aside this workshop, there's another workshop coming on for MLOps on Google Cloud, which is next month. Then the last one will be the following month, which will be on Azure. So if, assuming you follow this workshop very well, you pay attention, you do the practice, you do a little bit of research, just a little, you are good to go. Any other question for me to address? Okay, so Mr. Akim.
Yeah, good evening. Sorry.
Good evening.
Yeah, I want to ask that someone who's coming from data engineering background and DevOps, can he work with MLOps?
100%. If you are from a data engineering background and at the same time as from a DevOps background, your background is very good for MLOps role, because we are going to extract data from different sources, which is the job of or as a data engineer. Your job is to what? Take data set from different sources, process it, and move it from data lake to data warehouse and all those processes. So if you're able to do all these things, moving into MLOps will become very easier for you. Very, very, very easier.
So do I need to know a bit of machine learning?
I will highly encourage you to, because when we start the practicals, when we start building our pipelines to automate the processing of our data sets, building the models and deploying these models into production, you personally see the importance of having a knowledge of a machine learning engineer or a data scientist as well.
Okay, then. Thank you. Okay, thank
You're
you.
welcome. Okay, so so one more question is here. I'm from ML background, please. What are we going to use for monitoring and orchestration? Good. So with monitoring, this workshop is going to be fully AWS. Okay, so we are going to use AWS CloudWatch. We are going to use, under AWS CloudWatch, we have so many tools. We are going to use a service called Synthetic to frequently send a request to our model to make sure that what is giving us the actual results that we need. With orchestration, if you mean, can you give more explanation about it? With orchestration, are you referring to something like Kubernetes stuff or what? Promise, please, I'm waiting for you. Okay, so are you asking of preferred cloud or preferred cloud? Okay, great. So that is already a solution which has already been built for you to use. Okay, so it's like someone has already done that thing for you. How should I say it? Preferred cloud is like it makes your life very easier for you. It's very similar to ML Flow. Okay, so with what we are going to actually do here is that we are going to, the workshop has been designed in such a way that, remember that each organization, one thing you should know that each organization has their own set of tools. I am using GitHub Action for this demo. You may join an organization that uses something like Jenkins or Travis CI. But the moment you get the concept of all the things that we are doing, no matter what services that an organization is using, you can apply this concept into the same thing. That's why I'm actually not trying to use any particular set of frameworks, that we are trying to do things the hard way. Okay. So yes, Mr. Kim. Okay, so I think
I have another question. Like our classes, what's the time? Is it going to be every day? Are we doing the classes every day?
So it's actually it actually started yesterday to next week Friday. It's just a 1 week workshop. If you want to learn this thing from scratch personally with me, that one you'll have to reach out to me personally. And that one I think can take us like 5 to 6 months to complete the entire thing. Any other question?
Yeah, hello, sorry.
Sure.
So yeah, I realize that we are making use of tools too, but AWS, we all know about their costs. So can you give us some, like, I don't know, I'm not saying change your topic or anything, but if maybe there are other, like maybe as we are using one tool, maybe because CloudWatch like this, like they have their charges. For S3 is not that expensive. But like if there are some cost-effective options, you can expose us to, so that make it very easy for us to finish out, because AWS, Charlie, if you joke, your money will finish.
Right. So based on the way you are talking, even let me see that you don't have the skill set of an architect. So personally, since I have a skill set of an architect that I've been doing architect activities in my organization, most of the services that we are actually using is not going to cost as much. Let me show you something. I've actually been using SageMaker for the past 3 months now. Let me see. Okay, so this is the current month charges. So let's just pretend this month I launched a SageMaker Studio and I've been using, I didn't shut it down till today. And this is what I'm being charged. If you have an AWS free trial account, SageMaker is free for, I think, 1 or 2 months without costing. So just relax. All the services that we are going to use, I'm going to make sure that we are going to use services that are not that expensive. So if you're asking for a budget, I'll personally advise you to set a budget of, let's say, $20 for this entire course. But trust me, it's never even going to rate half of it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So if there's no other question, let's just have a look at the resources which have gotten probation. Okay. So let's first check S3. Let me refresh. At first we're having only this. Now we have what this ML project Terraform. So this is the Terraform backend. This is what we're using for our Terraform backend. This is going to be our data warehouse. This is going to be our data lake, and this is going to be our database. Coming to SageMaker, if you move to SageMaker Notebook and click on Notebook Instances, you see we have what ML Project Notebook. If you want to confirm the services, I have to come here. You can come here and check the variables name from here. You see that what they matches exactly. And if you come to Git repository, we also have this one, which I use as what Loan App. Then the next service that I think we used was Secret Manager. So we are actually using AWS Secret Manager to manage the tokens that we created. Then the last service that we've already provisioned, I think, let me see. Yeah, I think that's all. So these are the services that we've provisioned. Okay, so we also created an IAM rules over here. Let me quickly come here. So we have loan prediction, OIDC. We've created a rule, and also created a policy. So there's a policy which also got created, ML Project SageMaker IAM hot policy. So this policy has been attached to this rule, and this rule has been attached for the SageMaker Studio, which is going to use to validate AWS account to get access to the resources like the S3 buckets and stuff. Okay, so I think that's also now, if we want to destroy the resources, we already know what to do. Everything has been deployed. We just have to change, come up here, change, apply to destroy. Okay, so since we are almost done, let me quickly destroy it using this command. When we come the next day, I'll quickly re-provision it again, then we'll move on from there. So let me quickly go and create a pull request. So now our infrastructure is done. Let me close this. I'm going to merge it from here towards setup. So create pull request. So this one, we have to wait for the validation to pass. So it's actually running. It's going to make sure that all the resources that we are trying to delete exist. Now everything has gotten. Okay, now the pull request has passed. So now we can approve. It has started the trigger again. Let me quickly go up. We have to what? Review and what? Approve. So whilst it's getting destroyed, if anyone still has questions, can still have, we still have 8 minutes more to go. Okay, so someone is asking, so what we did was to set the env database and notebook on cloud before we start training and experimenting on the Node app project, right? Exactly. So promise, that's like exactly what we are trying to do. So we are actually using DevOps practices to set up our infrastructure. And starting tomorrow, we are going to use the notebook which got provisioned to build our models from scratch. So that was exactly what we've just done. Is there any other questions while the resources get destroyed one after the other?
My question is the Terraform script. How can we get it? Like, how do we get the Terraform script?
The Terraform, is it what I am using?
Yes.
I think I placed it in the chat. Here's it. This is the entire template that I've set. But what I am also using, let me just quickly share what's my own. This is my own, the one I'm currently working on. So you can use my own tool as well.
Okay.
So let's wait whilst everything gets destroyed to confirm that we've destroyed all the resources. Imagine if there's no DevOps practices into machine learning application, we have to set up all this infrastructure manually. Now that we have to destroy it, we have to go into each page to destroy each one of them. Imagine if we forget that or there's a notebook running, you just leave it there. By the time you realize it has quite a lot of charges that you have to pay. So using DevOps practices, you see how our lives are making very easier. So now any data scientist can just take this setup, try to set all the infrastructure up, then start working on his or her project. Then when he or she is done, he just have to tear down the entire infrastructure. As we are doing, it's still destroying the entire infrastructure. Okay, so someone is asking Terraform makes it easy or CloudFormation on AWS. So since CloudFormation is just for AWS, you can't use CloudFormation on Google Cloud or Azure. And since I am personally a multi-cloud engineer, I work on all the three cloud platforms. I prefer tools which I can use to kill 3 birds with one stone. But I personally also know how to use CloudFormations as well. But I highly prefer Terraform because I work on all the tech cloud providers and it really makes my life very easier for me. Any other questions for me? So now the resources have been finished destroyed, right? So let's go back to our cloud platform. Now I'm come to refresh this page. When I refresh, everything is gone. Let's go back to the policy, refresh. Now what we created is gone. So we have to, when I refresh, see it's gone. It's left with this one. Then what again? I think, yeah, that's it. Everything has gotten destroyed for us. You don't have to think whether there's a resource running. So few more minutes to go. I think we have just 5 more minutes left. If there's still questions, you can still ask with the 5 minutes remaining, please. All right.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So from what I take from it is this cloud, these books that we are like, where are they going to be run? These notebooks, are they going to be running on AWS, or they are going to be running? Where are they going to be running?
All right. So this is how it's going to work. Where is it? So actually, they're running on AWS. But the notebook, we have an option of selecting our own VPC. So virtual VPC, virtual private cloud. I don't want to go into those concepts.
Okay.
So if we come here, notebook, we click on notebook, you create it, you provide a name. It's going to run on. It's actually using EC2 behind, but it's running those EC2 in AWS managed. So meaning that you're not going to see those EC2.
So yeah, so my point is, you see, back on the expenses, when you did all the whole project, that's when you were spending the amount that you showed to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So exactly. But one thing, let me in tech, if you really want to, especially cloud, if you really want to excel, you really have to get some work to do and get money to actually spend on. Because sometimes in the free tier doesn't cover some of the practice that I do.
Yes,
so
that's what I want to know. Because
exactly.
Yes.
So sometimes I have a budget. So every month I have a budget like maybe $200 or $300 for all the 3 class platform. Because the practice that I do, people think that for you to get experience, you have to work in an organization. But I personally don't believe that. It's based on the project that you personally work on and how you approach those projects. You can even get experience than someone who has been working in an industry for so many years. So let me give you an example. Assuming you get a job and you always work on Windows systems as a DevOps engineer, you don't work in a Kubernetes infrastructure and you work for that company for 15 years. You've gotten the experience, but you still don't use, you've never used Kubernetes before. You've only specialized in that field. But let's say you are just practicing, you know that, okay, DevOps, I have to learn Kubernetes, I have to learn serverless, I have to learn infrastructure as code. And after learning everything, you put them all in one particular project and you work on it with different services, mimicking real world infrastructure. Do you know the amount of experience you are going to gain? So I think if there's no other question for me, let me see. Okay, so Promise is asking, so we have to add apply all the time. So you add apply when you want to create the resources. You add destroy when you want to destroy all the resources. Okay, so if there's no other question for me, I will personally like to say thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we meet tomorrow to continue with our MLOps session. Thank you guys so much. And this recording will also be available on YouTube. I'll share the link when I upload it. Okay. So thank you guys. See you tomorrow, the same time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.